Well, I first got involved in MS research because of the interest in the science as to what happened when nerves were demyelinated and how nerves functioned and repaired themselves in that situation. And then at that time, there were no treatments for multiple sclerosis. Even the diagnosis was difficult at times. But over the last 25 years, there have been enormous gains, and you just get carried along with it, and it's been an exciting period of time, actually, an exciting period to be involved in. My research involved remyelination, which is the restoration of the myelin sheath around injured nerves. Remyelination restores what's called the fidelity of the transmission of impulses, which is the key to neural tissue communicating from one side of the brain to the other, or from one part of the brain to the spinal cord. And that was really because there was no treatment to prevent the inflammation. We didn't know what caused it exactly, and we didn't know how to treat it. So we were looking at how to repair it as the basic means of improving people's lives with multiple sclerosis. The emphasis has switched a little, and now we concentrate much more on preventing injury in the first instance and repairing it secondly, and that's partly because the advances in repair processes has not been as fast as the advances in preventing the injury itself. MS Research Australia has been fundamental to many of us working in MS research. Once MS Research Australia arrived, took on the way in which we were conducting or governancing research in Australia, adopted those NH and MRC principles, and then showed that they were really serious about raising the sorts of money that MS researchers could use and use usefully in their research, then everybody wanted to get on board. And it's been an exhilarating ride, both from the point of view of MS Research Australia and what they've been able to achieve by that funding and by spreading the message and collecting more researchers to work on this problem, as well as the MS researchers themselves. The bulk of multiple sclerosis patients to begin with have a different form of MS than progressive MS. They have what we call relapsing and remitting MS. But after a period of time, 10 to 15 years, many of those patients, upwards of half of them, will adopt a more progressive deterioration in function, that is the increasing disability. So we now lump the whole lot together as progressive MS, both primary progressive, those that start without obvious inflammation, and those that have started with obvious inflammation but are now got a progressive phase of the disease process. For relapsing MS, we now have very, very effective treatments available, and thankfully in Australia they are all accessible. The way the government has introduced these and the way that neurologists in Australia have been able to use them means that we can suppress the disease almost as soon as it's diagnosed now. And the goal is that when you suppress the disease early, you will prevent subsequent progression. We may be on the verge of seeing the end of disabling relapsing type disease. Now, contrast that success, if you like, with what's happened to people with progressive MS. They've been left out in the cold almost. There's very little incentive from pharmaceutical companies to get too involved in it at the moment, and researchers haven't been able to excite funders to fund enough research. So the International Progressive MS Alliance recognises that and realises that we have to do something about it. So they have got together and they are collecting and raising significant amounts of money, with industry being involved as well, in order to galvanise researchers into looking at progressive MS as a serious challenge. And they've been remarkably successful so far. This is almost an iterative process, so it's not just like we have been doing, where people in isolation think up an idea they want to do, get a group together and apply for money and do it. This is to and fro. Does this fit with where we want to go? Is there another group who could work fruitfully with them and get a better outcome? It's that sort of process. It's a much more involved process with the Progressive Alliance. scientific steering committee working with those applicants. Drug discoveries, underlying pathological processes, biomarkers, and symptomatic treatment and rehabilitation. So they're the areas which we're targeting. We do have a large influence into how this is going. So it's not just participation, and it's certainly not just passive participation. It's so broad now, and it's accelerating. I mean, it's got a momentum which I think is unstoppable. And it's not just from the researchers, it's from organisations like MS Research Australia. I think that's going to happen globally as well. So there'll be, even now, the World Health Organization, their initiative now is on non-communicable disease. That is, things like dementia, multiple sclerosis, epilepsy. So they're turning their attention to this area also. So it's big, and it's getting bigger, and I'm hopeful that we'll have lasting benefits in all areas in a not too distant future.